Thank you very much, everyone, and good evening. I realize that I have a triply difficult job. Firstly, the speakers and the award ceremony has been outstanding, so maybe a really big round of applause for that to start. Secondly, I stand between you and dinner. You can't leave till I finish speaking. So our dinner will not get served till I finish speaking. But perhaps my hardest task actually is to talk about innovation, honoring a man who made innovation cool long before it was a hashtag, long before we had Instagram handles dedicated to it. We've heard a lot about Mr. Chinni Krishnan this evening, but I want to add that I've worked in a company where the idea of sachet actually powers that company. I spent the first 25 years of my working life working for Hindustan Unilever. And as you will know, they are reasonably large in lots of consumer goods and also reasonably large in products that sell in sachets, and owe this entirely to Mr. Ranganath's father. But on that note, Mr. Ranganath, Captain Vijay Kumar, Mr. Mahalingam, and Aarti, thank you for having me at this very august occasion. It is truly an honor. And if I knew the answer to what drives innovation, I would have definitely packaged it and sold it. But what I'm going to leave you with is a few thoughts that I've gleaned over the 2.5 decades that I have worked. I started actually by doing thinking about what the word innovation actually conjures up in my mind. And nowadays, if anybody says innovation, the first thing that comes to mind is AI, ChatGPT, this kind of thing. So I said, let me ask ChatGPT, what is innovation? And here's what it said. Innovation is the heartbeat of progress and transformation in our world. It drives the creation of new ideas, methods, products that fundamentally enhance existing systems or solve previously unmet needs. By cultivating a culture of innovation, we not only remain competitive, but we also pave the way for economic growth and improved quality of life through advancements in technology and services. That's a lot of English, which quite frankly is perhaps just that. And clearly, I need to get better at writing ChatGPT prompts. So I said, let me park ChatGPT and let me perhaps go back to slightly surer ground, which is the company that I work for. I have the privilege of working for Colgate Palmolive, an organization that has been around for a very long time, 200 plus years actually. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about why I believe innovation is important in this organization. Before I go there, however, I, of course, read up some reports by some consultants. McKinsey had done a survey, and they asked leaders in companies, how important is innovation? And 80+% of them, not surprisingly, said innovation is critical. And for those of you who are wondering who are the remaining 15-odd%, I was wondering that as well. But clearly, if McKinsey says 80+%, that must be true. What was interesting, however, was that almost all company leaders, 96% of them, said that they were unhappy with the way innovation was happening in their company. And they did not feel that their organization was adequately innovative enough. And so when so many are dissatisfied, and when all of us know that at least in the FMCG world, 9 out of 10 innovations that get put into the market fails, really, it becomes very, very important for us to perhaps get a better grip on innovation. Going back to my job, like I said, I have the privilege of running in India the Colgate Palmolive business. Colgate is a brand that was founded by William Colgate way back in 1806, making the brand just a little bit older than me, and just perhaps a little bit older than most of you in the audience. Lots of firsts that this brand had. In 1873, Colgate started mass producing the first aromatic toothpaste. It came in a jar. This toothpaste took till 1896 to move to a tube and got called the Colgate Ribbon Dental Cream. In 1937, before we got independence, Colgate was the first oral health product in India. In 1997, Colgate Total was introduced. And I am a marketeer by profession, so I'm going to take a 30-second ad break here to tell you about Colgate Total being the best everyday toothpaste and also the toothpaste that most Colgate people use. So that's the end of the ad break. And now back to the speech. I could go on with more and more firsts that Colgate has achieved in its lifetime. But what I want to land here is the importance of being first. I think the idea of being first to market, of being innovative, of having something that nobody else has that fulfills a desire is actually exceptionally important. But apart from being first, successful innovation also needs a few more things. It needs an understanding of the job that your product is being hired to do. Whether your product is, a life-saving blood clotting device like the one that we saw, whether your product is an air purification thing, or your product is sustainable packaging material, what is the job that it is serving in the lives of the consumers that you serve is really important. And I want to give you an example that I had heard a long time ago. A person was doing some research on quick service restaurants, and they were seeing that a lot of milkshakes sold early in the morning between 7:30 to 9 a.m. This is the US. So 7:30 to 9 a.m. kind of time, lots of milkshakes were sold. And so they were wondering, why do milkshakes get sold at that time? For any of you who have lived or worked or holidayed in the US, you will realize that a lot of people drive long commutes to work. They live here and they drive 100 kilometers to get to work. So a lot of people actually would stop, buy a milkshake, put it in their car, and take it along with them. And a milkshake was better than a hot drink because it stayed at roughly the same temperature. But when you know that the reason why your product is being hired is to last a 100-kilometer commute, you can create a product that works for that need. So a product that lasts a 100-kilometer commute needs to be, firstly, roughly the same temperature throughout, so it shouldn't get too warm too quickly and shouldn't melt. Secondly, it should be thick enough to take a little bit of effort to come through the straw, but not so thick that I'm distracted from driving, because most of these people were driving themselves to work. It would be fantastic if that product had a little bits in it that every now and then surprise me, because driving is not fun, US or India or anywhere else. And when I know this, I can create a significantly better product. So knowing who your consumer is and why your consumer buys your product, or what is the job that your product does in that consumer's life, is really critical. And this is where I've got to keep coming back to Colgate and talk about the fact that at the heart of the Colgate business is the commitment that we want to improve everybody's oral health every single day. And against that commitment, we have 900 plus scientists, 10,000 plus patents, 7 global tech centers, 2.7 times higher oral care scientific publications than the next player. And it's this kind of commitment that keeps your brand at the forefront of innovation, at the forefront of technology. And I give you these numbers at scale because we are a scale company, and I know that many of you in this audience perhaps work for larger companies or smaller companies, but the idea behind this really has to be the commitment to delivering against the promise that you have made to your consumers. So innovation needs to be first. It needs to be consumer relevant. It needs to be backed by science and data to deliver to its promise. And like David Ogilvy famously said, the consumer is not a fool. She's your wife, or in this day, let me be slightly more correct and say consumers are not fools. They are your parents, your partner, or your children. And that's something for us to constantly keep in mind, because you can fool them once, but you certainly can't fool them all the time. And that is not the way to build a sustainable business. The next facet of innovation that I want to talk about actually is something that got referenced a lot today, and one of our winners also referenced a lot, which is the idea of sustainability. So if I was to ask you in this room, at the end of this question, to just by a show of hands, tell me, would you like your products to come with less plastic or no plastic, be recyclable, use less water, use less fossil fuels, be better for the environment, and still deliver to promise? If yes, please raise your hand. Yeah, fantastic. That's like 70% of the room that's raised their hand. Now, if I ask you, and this time I will not ask you to raise your hand, the 70%, how many of you would be willing to pay incrementally for this benefit? The answer becomes much lower. One hand, yes, but I'm saying by and large, the answer does become much lower. And I think this dichotomy between what consumers say and what they do is something that puts a lot of onus on companies to be innovative in the way they address sustainability. So it's not good enough for me to say, oh, consumer will not pay for sustainability, therefore I will not do anything. And therefore, to give you yet again a Colgate example, Colgate developed the first ever recyclable toothpaste tube. Quite a big deal because, toothpaste, it goes in your mouth, it needs adequate barrier property to keep the product safe, etc. First recyclable tube. Firstly, the company made it open source so that everybody could use it. It's not going to be an advantage only for Colgate. And secondly, we then in India took this and said that we want 100% of our tubes to be recyclable, but we want to do it adding zero cost. Zero. So we now have, or we will have, as we exit this year, almost our entire portfolio in recyclable tubes at zero cost, because this country has done what this country is outstanding at, which is frugal innovation. And therefore, I think an accountability on companies to marry the idea of sustainability along with innovation to make sure that we can deliver this to consumers without adding to the burden of cost. I'm going to move now to really the two different types of innovation that I've seen, and I'm sure all of you have seen as well. The first type of innovation being sustaining innovation, where it follows a linear path and you get incrementally better. So if we were to take our Colgate Strong Teeth and add arginine technology to it, that would be a sustaining innovation. We would relaunch it, there'd be new packaging, new communication, it would have better formulation, better flavor, excellent, along a linear path. And this kind of innovation is really important to FMCG companies to make sure that you're constantly moving ahead and constantly keeping a moat between you and your next competitor. The second kind of innovation is really disruptive innovation. And in the toothpaste world, that would be, a lot of you, I'm sure, want a whiter, brighter smile. You can get that with the toothpaste, but you could also get that with a leave-on whitening serum. So when Colgate launches, as it has done last month, a leave-on whitening serum, that becomes a disruptive innovation, which, as the name implies, is not linear. It is disruptive, but again, keeps at its heart the reason why the consumer is hiring this product or this service. So organizations need both sustaining innovation to ensure that, like I said, the gap between them and similar alternatives already exists, and disruptive innovations to make sure that you're raising the bar for insurgents and not just sitting there thinking, it's all good and we can do more of the same. So that perhaps a segue into my last part of what I wanted to say, which is what makes an organization innovative. I've had the privilege of working for two fantastic companies through my career, Hindustan Lever and Colgate. And here's what I've learned. So apart from what we've already discussed, which is keeping the consumer at the heart, putting your money where your mouth is in terms of what you deliver, in terms of the promise and desirability, organizations or working places also need a culture that supports innovation. And the first thing in that culture is really to bring the ability to bring the outside in and see the problems that people are facing. And I love the idea of your father, sir, who had this idea that everybody should be able to afford what the rich afford. What a fabulous vision. And if you were to think about why Airbnb started because its founders found that they didn't have enough money to pay the rent. They had an empty loft, so they said, let's rent out the loft, and from there, the idea was born. Or my erstwhile company, Sunlight, was created at a time, Sunlight Soap, where hygiene standards were exceptionally low, and mass producing a soap meant that lives could be saved just by the simple act of hand washing and better clothes washing. So this ability to look outside and see the problems that consumers are facing and internalize those problems and make solutions is the first thing that organization culture needs, to my mind. The second is to give people the space to be creative. Creativity is not something that you can do going, 3 ideas now. Doesn't work like that. You need to be able to create an environment that allows them to think, an environment that fosters connection. And in that, I want to come back to something that Mr. Ranganath said, that a lot of these ideas would fail. And the ability to handle that failure as a leader and as a company is exceptionally important. And I must tell you, now almost 30 years into my working career, I think I have learned more from the numerous failures that I've had than from the far more limited successes. The third thing is innovation needs discipline. It is not about that one apple on your head moment or the one, Edison's light bulb moment, but high quality innovation is usually the result of hours of work, of understanding your audience, understanding what your product can deliver, and then making sure that you're combining these two. As a side story, when I was a child, I used to see Picasso's paintings. I'm sure for any of you who've seen them, you're thinking, I can do that. I can paint that. Now, as an adult, I don't think I can paint that either. But I used to look at those paintings and go, oh, this is easy. I can paint these. But then you realize that actually the man had the ability to paint beautifully. And only then could he break the rules and create what he did, which was Cubism. The fourth thing that innovation culture needs is an ecosystem and diversity. Normally, when we think of diversity these days, we think of adding women. But it's not about adding women, or it's not only about adding women. It's about adding people who have diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of problem-solving approaches. And the more we have more of those people in a room, the more likely we are to get to better innovation. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we need for an innovative culture people who believe that what got us here will not get us there. Because it's always, always easier to stay with the status quo than to break it and to redefine it. And you need a set of people in every group who are the people who are going, oh, we're going to lose, somebody's going to overtake us, someone's going to eat our lunch. You need those kind of people who are slightly on the edge of paranoia to say that we must challenge status quo and to get us to a better place. It's always interesting, however, that this challenge to status quo usually comes from outside of the own company. And lastly, just to conclude, I'm the mother of 2 children, one who is hopefully going to join the workforce soon, I hope, and the second who's hopefully going to college soon. And I can't think of a better time to be an innovator or to be an innovator in India. I'm quite often on the jury of many of these award ceremonies, and I see a lot of the entries, like the fabulous, fabulous entries and winners that we've seen today. And it's incredible what India can create. So I must say that sitting where I do, it's my absolute privilege to watch all of you innovate and take this country forward. And I wish you much success and happiness in doing it. Thank you for your attention.